The imperfect, in Portuguese, is a past tense that describes past habits, repeated past actions, and descriptions and background information. By asking what was happening or what used to happen, we're saying an action in the imperfect past. Unlike the Portuguese preterite, which has many irregular verbs, the imperfect is simpler, due to regular conjugations and only a few irregularities. Portuguese verbs have 3 infinitive endings: ar, ir, and each one has its own pattern in the imperfect. Let's take the verb falar, to speak, which ends in ar. To conjugate it, take the infinitive, drop the ending, and add the imperfect endings. Falava, falavas, falava, falávamos, falavam. In this case, one conjugation is borrowed twice, falava, so context and subject meaning will show the difference. Also, the conjugation for nos has an accent to keep the stress on the original syllable as it is in every other conjugation. In the imperfect, the words mean was speaking or used to speak because the tense is about continuous actions in the past. In English, the tense is formed with was or were plus a gerund, but in Portuguese, the imperfect is sufficient in showing the same meaning. Now, let's see verbs that end in er and ir, like comer, to eat, and partir, to leave. For such verbs, the endings are the same, so they're borrowed. To conjugate them, take the infinitive, drop the ending, and add the imperfect endings. Comia, comias, comia, comíamos, comiam. Partia, partias, partia, partiamos, partiam. Once again, one conjugation is borrowed twice, and the conjugation for nos has an accent to keep the stress on the original syllable. In general, this is how regular verbs are conjugated in the imperfect tense in Portuguese, so we only need to remember 2 regular patterns. Now, we can see some sentences that exhibit habitual and continuous actions, like Nós comíamos juntos todos os dias. Eles falavam português em casa. Eu comia quando ela chegou. Nós falávamos quando o professor entrou. Notice that some phrases have preterite actions, which show events that were completed during continuous ones. After learning regular conjugations, we can see irregular verbs, and in this tense, there are only 4. Ser, ter, vir, and por. While every verb is different, it's possible to see some similarities in verb stems. The most distinctive verb is ser, to be. Era, eras, era, éramos, eram. Then we have ter, to have. Tinha, tinhas, tinha, tínhamos, tinham. Then we have vir, to come. Vinha, vinhas, vinha, vinhamos, vinham. Then we have por, to put. Punha, punhas, punha, punhamos, punham. In essence, this is how irregular verbs work in the Portuguese imperfect. While ser has different conjugations, the rest are predictable because they share irregular imperfect stems. Still, after seeing all types of conjugations, it's important to consider other verbs that can be tricky to use, such as ser, to be, and ir, to go. In the preterite, they share the same form, so context tells the difference. In the imperfect, they have different forms and uses. For example, the imperfect of ser is common for descriptions, characteristics, identity, and background situations in the past. Eu era muito tímido. Nós éramos amigos. A casa era pequena. In this context, ser signifies that things used to be in a certain state, but they're not anymore. On the other hand, ir follows regular conjugations in the imperfect, but it means was going or used to go, like eu ia à escola todos os dias. Eles iam para casa depois do trabalho. Despite sharing the same preterite form, it's very easy to tell them apart in the imperfect. A different verb to consider is ter, to have. In the imperfect, it's used when something is presented as a past state, circumstance, or ongoing situation. This includes concepts like age and possession. Eu tinha carro. I had a car. Eu tinha 10 anos. I was 10 years old. The tense doesn't tell us when I got the car or when I was 10 years old. Instead, it describes an ongoing state that I had in the past. This is different from the preterite, which presents things as completed. A good contrast is this. Eu tinha cachorro. I used to have a dog. Here, I'm describing a situation that used to exist in the past. Eu tive cachorro por 10 anos. I had a dog for 10 years. Here, the period is presented as a completed and defined occurrence. Essentially, we shouldn't think of ter as simply used to have or had. The distinction is more about how the speaker views the past situation. Tinha can mean I had as a background or state, while tive can mean I had as a completed past occurrence. The last thing to note in the imperfect is saber and conhecer, which I showed in the preterite video. Saber means to know facts, and conhecer means to be familiar with ideas. While the preterite changes the meaning of the verbs, the imperfect keeps the meaning. So, saber means knew or was aware of, and conhecer also means knew or was familiar with in the past. In other words, the two verbs have no change, so they describe existing knowledge. Eu sabia a resposta. Nós sabíamos que ele estava em casa. Eu conhecia Maria. Ela conhecia aquele restaurante. So, the imperfect makes the verbs describe states as they do in the present, but the preterite changes them with the beginning of knowledge. So, this is how the imperfect past tense fully works in Portuguese.